Hey guys, how's it going? Vitali here, rocking a solo video, new stuff we're trying out to kind of mix things up, see what you guys like, we'll see what you don't. So today, filming on a Friday here, looking to bring you guys some trade targets, both away and for. Before we get in there, let me just get the socials out of the way. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitter, those are the big two. If you want to leave us some questions, some comments, concerns, whatever you got for us. Remember that is on Twitter is at fantasy the number 4 pack. For Ian, that's at fantasy 4p underscore Ian. I am at the Foon, and we've also got at Senpai Koala for Frankie. With that out of the way, remember, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that jazz, so we can keep bringing you great content every week. But now that we've got the boring stuff out of the way, let's get right into it. So, I like to preface this with trading is one of my favorite things when it comes to fantasy, other than the draft itself, which I think everyone can agree is great. But trading in season really shows who deserves it and who wants it, because you can be a front runner or you could be a guy in the back. But if you're just sitting on your hands at your team, unless you're perfect, which no one knows, because you asked your Derrick Henry manager how they were feeling about their team, probably pretty good, but injuries happen. Players are overperforming. Players are underperforming. It happens every year. Things swing. But remember, you got to win enough just to get in the playoffs. And then once you're in the playoffs, you got to make sure you're set up for those 3 weeks, which is this season. Remember, we have the extra week. So we will be having our championship in week 17, most likely. You got to set yourself up to win 15, 16, and 17. Maybe you got that magical bye and you only got to win two. But still, you got to win 2 games to take home that ship of your league. And with these guys here I'm talking about, I think they're either assets that you need to move on from because they're not going to help you in the long run, or I think these are guys you need to pick up now before their price spikes, or just get them on your team regardless because they're going to be assets for your team to win it big. So starting off here, I'm going to go with a guy that I was not too big on this season, but has grown on me as he's shown. Mr. Deandre Swift of the Detroit Lions. Now, why do I like him so much this week? Right now, week 9, he is on a bye. So you could go to the manager that drafted him and say, hey, you probably got a loss last week. I know I did. But, he only scored about 3 points in standard, about in half PPR, about 5.6. So definitely not what you're looking for a guy who might be your RB2. And, if you're deep at the position, maybe RB3. But you can go to that manager and say, hey, you need a win this week. I can eat that bye for you. Kind of eat that cost. You can also talk to him and be like, hey, he's got Pittsburgh and Cleveland next. Do you think you can eat 3 losses in a row? That's the art of the trade right there. So DeAndre Swift, everyone knows he's valuable. Everyone knows he's great. He's taking over this backfield. He's playing 75% of the snaps, which is what you want to see from a bell cow back. He's getting work in the passing game. He's getting work on the ground. He's being efficient with both of them. Like, the Lions are struggling as a team, and they need to use Swift. Him and Hawkinson are their 1-2. And Swift is right now carrying the load with Hawkinson on and off injuries. So I look at Swift as a great guy to buy right now because, like I said, he is on bye. Then 2 tough weeks with Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Now, when you go back to it, what are you getting? Well, you're getting a premier back, guy who's getting high usage. And then on top of that, the creme de la creme here, 15, he plays Arizona, 16 Atlanta, 17 Seattle. Those are all teams that give up points to the running back, and that's what you need if you're going to win a title here. He's a great target for those teams who are on the upper side of their leagues, someone who can eat a bye, eat a loss, maybe. That's how it is. DeAndre Swift's not for everybody. If your team is struggling, if you don't have the depth at a position, maybe you look elsewhere. But I've got other options here. So let's just go ahead and right next to the next player here. Another fan favorite here, Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns. People were waiting for him. He was injured for 2 weeks, and we got to see what Dearness Johnson could do. This team is driven through the running back positions. We've seen with how valuable both of their running backs can be. And everyone was waiting for him to come back because he has been basically matchup proof through most of his career. He should have been the rushing leader more times than he has been. He is crazy efficient on the ground, where 3.8 is the yards per carry is the worst we've seen out of him this year. He comes back, he gets Pittsburgh and dud. I mean, it was a low scoring affair, 15-10. there couldn't get much room to run in this one. Only got 61 on the ground, one target. Like, not what you want to see from a pyramid back that you probably took in the back of the first round here. Going forward, though, he still does have his bye, which is a downside. But when you once again look at his playoff schedule, Week 14 against Baltimore, which has been exploitable, so it could help you get into your playoffs. 15, Vegas, Green Bay, Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh has shown to be an Achilles heel, but I see that more as him coming back off of this injury. I expect him to have a get-right game because we have seen him run up against stout fronts, Minnesota, the Chargers, and he has torched them all. He is elite level talent that manager might be just not able to eat another bye. And he's looking at, I already lost 2 weeks of Chubb. The team's not looking great. They got rid of Odell. If they believe in Odell, hey, that's less offensive weapons. That's more pressure on Nick Chubb to get stuff done. The team's banged up. They need something to get going and to get them back in the winning column because they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. So it's like I said, it's about massaging the guy you're talking to. Talk to him and see where they're at. If they're in a position where they're wanting to trade, are they looking to make a big deal to really shake up their team? It's like I said, it's all communication. That's what trading is. But I think Nick Chubb is a smash trade target for your team. Now let's go to a guy who started hot and is a little bit not right now. Mr. DJ Moore, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. Started off great. I was an owner of him. I actually traded him right before his peak, and he has fallen from that peak. It's been rough sledding his last 4 matchups. 3.8, 5.9, 7.3, 5.9 points and half point. Standard. But regardless, this guy is the focal point of their passing attack, especially if you're playing in a half PPR where those numbers I just rattled off are actually 6.3, 8.4, 10.3, and 7.9, just to kind of get those out there for his last 4 games. He is looking lost. The whole team's looking lost, but they're getting Christian McCaffrey back. The team is getting healthy. And just as with Sam Darnold, where his best games were while Christian McCaffrey was behind him, DJ Moore's best games were also with Christian McCaffrey. So people who saying, oh, Christian McCaffrey's going to be back, that's less targets going his way. It's better quality of target. Because now they have to focus on the prime threat, which is no longer DJ Moore. It's Christian McCaffrey. So this guy's going to have room to run. He has been getting it done with targets. I mean, even through these terrible games, 7, 13, 10, and 8 targets, it's hard to find a receiver out there with that. And right now he is putting up, barely wide receiver 3 numbers. You can go to this manager who probably just ate 4 L's in a row, especially if they're desperate. This guy's still got a bye. Once again, that's another thing to be looking at right now. We're in the midst of the bye. There's a lot of buys that just went past. If you're a team that's ahead, talk to him. Say, hey, do you think you can eat this Week 13 bye that's coming up? Do you think you can deal with that? Like, he's got New England this week. That's a tough defense. That's a very, very tough defense to throw against. I could see him struggling if McCaffrey's not right, and this game could get away from him and be a very slow slog. I mean, that's New England's game plan here. So, once again, that's something I'm talking to him about. Like, hey, this is what your matchup's looking like. You need this win here. Let's make this deal. Or you're talking to a top team who's got other guys, and DJ Moore's their 3rd receiver. They're not really looking at him anymore. Just like, hey, let's do a swap here. You need running back depth. Let me get you an RB3. So I'll swap for that wide receiver. Running back depth's not great. Let me go ahead and flip you this guy. And boom, you've just got DJ Moore, who I expect to have a great end of season, about a nice bounce back candidate. But talking about players that are a little bit less valuable right now, they're or just took a hit. Dak Prescott, he just missed a week here right after his bye, so you'd hope he'd be healthy, but wasn't able to suit up for the Minnesota game. They were able to win that one without him, but he is the driver of this offense. Zeke used to be, but now this is an aerial attack. Dak is proving that he can produce both for his team and for fantasy. He is one of my favorite quarterbacks to go pick up, because as you get towards the end of the season, when we start getting those double-digit weeks, so next week, you're going to start seeing articles popping up like championship winning guys that have strength of schedule for the championship. And when those articles come out, guess what? Your fantasy the league mates are also going to be seeing these articles. So I like to be ahead of the curve here. Get this guy now before people are thinking playoffs. Always be thinking playoffs. Always be thinking, hey, does this put me in a good place to win? You got to get wins now, and that's obviously something you should be paying attention to. But if you're not looking at the playoffs, if you're not looking at your end of season schedule, you could be setting yourself up for disaster. Because if you're holding all these players with just rough matchups in the playoffs, you could have a world beater team going in. You could be the number one team going in. You can get that bye. You go right into week 16 and just get slapped right out of the playoffs. It's happened to me before. It's something you need to start paying attention to. And Dak, for week 14, so this is the game before the playoffs. He gets Washington, Giants, Washington, Arizona. Those are both cake matchups, and then he gets the championship in what should be a shootout. An absolute, like, we're going to see a easy 50 plus total unless something devastating happens to one of these two teams. So I like him as a great, just championship QB. I think I will not be surprised when I see him on like the percentages of championship rosters. We know how they throw. We know that this offense is always on the field because they have so many weapons. You'd be doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least, talk to the manager with Dak Prescott, because we know in single quarterback leagues they're not as valuable. If people are, maybe they're a little bit easier to move them. If maybe you have a guy of equal value and you're just like, hey, I got Josh Allen, you got Dak Prescott, I'll throw you Allen, you throw me Dak at another guy, let's get it done. But moving on, I wanted to throw in here for my fifth buy target a wide receiver that we actually just saw play. A guy I think that his value is starting to run up, and if you can go ahead and buy him, I think he's a great guy to buy now, because rookie wide receivers, end of the season, this is when they have their breakout that we've been seeing. This is Mr. Elijah Moore, wide receiver for the New York Jets. This kid just had himself a game, 7 receptions, 8 targets, almost 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, he put up like 20 something points in half point PPR. If you're a manager and you're just overlooking this kid, I can understand it. It's the Jets. He hasn't looked good. The team doesn't look good. But as we're seeing, Zach Wilson seems to be the issue with this team. I think Robert Saleh is getting a great handle on this team and starting to figure out how to make this offense work. I mean, he now has 2 back-to-back games of putting up 30-plus points, which is nothing easy, especially in the NFL. Against Cincinnati and now Indy. Those are both defenses. They're at least in the middle of the pack if you're going to lowball them. But why I want Elijah Moore. This team needs an alpha dog receiver. They drafted Elijah Moore to be their alpha receiver. That's the style he plays. He was a hype train coming into the season, being like, he's your sleeper pick. You got to get him on your team. And I agreed. I was right there with him. He was a late round stash guy that I wanted to get. A couple leagues I did grab him, couple leagues I missed out on him, and he had a slow start. He had a typical rookie slow start. Wide receiver's a tough position to pick up. He struggled with it, and then he got injured. So he got injured, he was out, they hit the bye, he comes back. He at least gets 6 targets in that first game back, but it's a dud. He only catches 1 ball. He at least gets in the end zone, so to salvage his fantasy day with a rushing touchdown. But on the whole, he hasn't been, as a receiver at least, there. But then he had week 8, which I think was the signal for his breakout. 6 targets, 6 receptions, caught all the balls thrown his way, 67 yards. It was a quiet day for fantasy, but I like to see this when I'm looking at a receiver here with breakout potential. Targets. The ball has to come your way for you even to be able to attempt to score points. And there have been in the past some receivers like an A.J. Brown who can take 4 targets and just take 2 of them to the house and just be a stud for you. Some guys, you need at least to be getting 6 or 7 targets to really do anything with it. And from the jump from week 1, week 1 he had 4. Since then, 8, 6, 2, 6, 6, 8. I'm seeing a guy here that's averaging between 6 and 8 targets. I think he's a guy that's swinging upwards. You're going to have to buy him, but remember, he has done almost nothing all year, so you can really talk to this manager and be like, hey, you just picked him up off the waiver wire. He's just been a stash. Are you really going to trust the Jets? What if Zach Wilson comes back? And those are all valid arguments. And for some people, as I was talking to Ian about this one, this guy might be a guy you want to sell now before his Buffalo matchup. Or you can look at it as a buy for next week, because Buffalo's a stingy off a defense against the wide receiver position, and he could struggle. But after that, Playoffs, once again, Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. Those are all defenses that can be exploited through the air, and I think this offense will start to gel towards the end of the season. I could see Elijah Moore being a sneaky grab that could be a wide receiver too for a team out there that's trying to make some smart moves. So for me, he is a great wide receiver to go out there and pick up now. All right. Well, now that we've kind of got the positive stuff out of the way, unfortunately, we do got to talk about some players that are in some risky spots that I think you need to be moving on from. So, without further ado, let's stay in the wide receiver position. I'm going to talk about Mr. Cortland Sutton, Denver wide receiver here. Last week was a bit of a letdown here. Not much in the way of production for him, only 5 points and half point. I mean, you want to look at it and say, oh, it's just because Jerry Jeudy came back or this. No, they spread the ball around everyone. Everyone got 4 targets. Every wide receiver, all the running backs, everyone got a full share of this ball against a Washington defense that has been a sieve. Anyone's been able to do anything they want with this defense. Chase Young's having a down year, and he needs to work on his defensive rushing technique. But they get Dallas next week. Dallas has been stingy against the alpha receiver, but we saw while Justin Jefferson was getting shut down, Adam Thielen was having himself quite a nice game. So I think here, if Jerry Jeudy once again reasserts himself as the one and they target him as the go-to guy, because I think Jerry Jeudy is a guy that could break out, and that's kind of why I'm off on Cortland Sutton. Dallas game might be the one where you might want to sell him afterwards, or just get him off your team now if you're not willing to risk it. Because if he has another dud on your roster, that's 3 games of sub 10 points scoring for Cortland Sutton, and I don't know how much more fantasy managers are going to want to buy into an offense that is led by Teddy Bridgewater, him spreading out the ball. He is great for his team. He is a great quarterback to help them manufacture wins, but they just traded Von Miller, who was a great anchor to that defense. Jerry Jeudy's back. It's tough for me to buy into a receiver here that is seeing his targets drop drastically, 5 and 4 in the last 2 games. I don't see it getting much better, and on top of that, you can avoid his bye potentially because it's coming up in week 11. There's just not a lot to like here. The Cortland Sutton, which is a shame because he's one of my favorite receivers, and I pegged him as a breakout later this season kind of guy, especially as he kind of got his feet under him. He got confident in that knee, as we were worried about in the offseason. Jerry Jeudy had to take some time away from an injury. All the stars were aligning for Cortland Sutton to really kind of break out, and he took the position for a bit, but clearly he's losing his grasp on it. So I think you need to go ahead and move Cortland Sutton. I would do just a sideways deal, or maybe a slightly downward one for a low end 2 that you can look at that's also kind of struggling with some form of upside. Maybe an Elijah Moore and something else, but Cortland Sutton, you just got to get him off your team. Moving on, sticking in the wide receiver position, I'm talking about Mr. Robert Woods, a wide receiver that has, since he has mentioned it to his team, has been getting more targets. He has been getting more involved in this offense and producing. But why am I looking to get rid of him? Well, I think we're going to see things return back to the way it was. I mean, you can say, hey, they just released Deshaun Jackson, but he was a minimal factor, if that. And I think that's more of a boon to Van Jefferson, who I think is another guy that has a skill set that they're trying to bring in here. Cooper Kupp's already it used to be a 1A, 1B with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and it was who's going to have the better season. And, as on this show, we lean towards Cooper Kupp because he had the touchdown upside. Well, he's got the touchdown upside and then some. He just full broke away. He is the one. Robert Woods is the 2. That is just undebatable at this point, no matter how much Robert Woods talks to his team about getting more involved. And we saw it. I mean, he spiked for 14 targets, 150 yards back in week 5, and it's kind of trickling back down. I mean, 5 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets. It's solid, but really what's buoying his value is his touchdowns. Like I said, since week 5, or actually since week 4, he's had 3 touchdowns. I just don't see him getting another rushing touchdown. Like last week, he had almost 20 points in half point, and that was not because of his receiving work. He still got 9 targets, but only caught 3. He ran 1 in. He is a tough receiver to believe in an electric offense. So when I'm trying to sell somebody, I don't want to just, hey, this guy's doing bad, let me sell him, because no one's going to want to buy him. I'm looking for guys like Robert Woods, where he is producing. He's had 10 plus fantasy points since week 4, and you can look at people want to get a part of this offense. They want a piece. They want to figure out a way in because Sean McVay is the guru of offense. Cooper Kupp's being electric. Darrell Henderson's looking like he's having a breakout season. Like all these different guys, people want a piece of. And Robert Woods might be a one where they're like, hey, maybe this is a cheap buy-in. Like, oh yeah, let me go ahead and sell him as a wide receiver too, and up end. You can sell him probably even as a higher end wide receiver too because of his name, the quality of like consistency he's provided over the years, and just the Rams offense. I see him slipping down to the point where he's going to be maybe a low end 2. I honestly might even see him as a high end 3 comes end of season. I want him off my team. He still has a bye to deal with, and the passing defenses that they're coming up to towards the end of the season do get far more rough. So Robert Woods, unfortunately, is one of my sell candidates for this week. Moving on, I'm going to go ahead and jump through my last 2 kind of quick here. So I got James Conner as my running back sell for this week. He has been producing this season. Arizona's been a great offense. They are a little banged up at the moment, but as we all know, James Conner is 100% reliant on touchdowns. He's been getting them, but it's going to take a lot to convince me that Chase Edmonds isn't due for positive regression, that DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to start scoring, that there's just too many mouths in this offense for me to be confident, and especially when you have a running quarterback like Kyler Murray, you could get down there, it could look like a James Conner touchdown, and they could sell that fake right there and just let him scoot one in, and boom, like I said, all of his touchdown upside just goes down the drain. And once again, he's still listed as the RB2 on this depth chart. He's fluctuated with his usage. So for me, I'm trying to get him off my team ASAP while he still has great value and a great offense that he's attached to. Because I think Chase Edmonds slowly starts kind of cementing his role and taking away more and more snaps from Conner. And to round it out here for me, going back to the quarterback position, I gave you 1 to buy, so I'm going to give you 1 to sell. And I'm not just going to come out here and say, sell Derek Carr, because he is a streamer candidate. So I want to sell someone I want you selling somebody that has value, somebody that people want to buy, and they might be surprised when you come to them. So for me, that's Matthew Stafford. He has been great this season. I'm hoping for him to be able to make a great playoff push here because he deserves it. He's been a great pro that has been stuck in Detroit, the swamp that is that team. Really getting to break out here with the Rams. Now that he has weapons, now that he has a defense, now that he has a coach, like all these things have just aligned, and he is making the best of it. And he has been just a great, consistent fantasy quarterback. He hasn't really, boomed over 30 this season yet, but he hasn't really killed you in any game. His worst game was 17.5 points. Against Seattle, which is still respectable, but at the end of the day, he is averaging a 9 yards an attempt. Like, there's a lot to like here, but why am I selling him? Simple. Playoff. When he gets to the playoff, he has to go against Arizona in Week 14, which should be a great shootout. But then he goes Seattle, Minnesota, Baltimore. Great defenses, great running games on all 3 of those offenses. They can slow the game down. I can see this one really being a down step for him, and I want to get away from a guy that might be in less shootouts. I want as much shootout potential as possible. And Seattle will have Russell Wilson back by that time. Minnesota's been playing much better this season as opposed to last season. Their defense is much improved. Baltimore is, like I said, they're just a great defense with a great running game, whether it's through their quarterback or their actual running backs or just whoever it is, the running back at that point. But Stafford, for me, presents a guy that he's not popping the way that you'd like to see. And when you get to the playoffs, you could get a nice 20-point game out of Matthew Stafford and still lose because you go up against Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, 2 great quarterbacks to the playoffs, and they pop off for 35. Now you have to make up that 15 points somewhere else. Unless you have a really stacked team, it might be tough. And because when you get to the playoffs and you're in the week 2, first week or second week of it, you're playing legit teams that are all star-studded. So for me, he's a sell. And that's going to do it for my list today. I hope you enjoyed. Hope there was a guy on here that you were looking to move or a guy that you weren't thinking about going to buy. Once again, leave comments, Twitter, YouTube. Those are the best two places to contact us. I mean, we have Instagram. We don't use it as much. We try and post some stuff out there, but like I said, Twitter is definitely the best place. We love hearing trade conversations. Send us a picture of your team and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. What do you think? We can at least give you a couple of notes, maybe some guys that you should look at instead. But once again, trading, it's a holistic picture. It's about your team, their team, how do they mesh, where can you find a thing? Because you might want a guy, but if their team doesn't have another piece to throw in to make the balancing act work out, you just might not be able to get it done. Well, good luck in your matchups this week, everyone except for you, Garrett.